My guest on the show today is Mark Bowden. He is a body language expert and an international best-selling author. Now, I picked up his book, How to Tame the Primitive Brain, and that's what made me wanted to bring him on. And in this book, one of the concepts he talks about that we dive into today on the podcast is instincts and how humans are programmed with the instinct to be able to read body language quite well. And we're constantly reading this body language, and we basically, according to Mark, put everybody into one of four categories. And those four categories are either friend, foe, sexual partner, or we are just completely indifferent to them. Mark today on the show talks about utilizing body language, how to read body language, and we talk about different scenarios. Great, fun conversation. He talks about dating, how we can use this in dating tips, whether or not you're in an argument or a debate, how you could win an argument or a debate. And we talk about whether or not you want to win an argument or debate, whether it's useful to you, and how it applies to sales and succeeding and climbing corporate ladders and things like that. But I think ultimately the most surprising thing on this episode today is Mark's discussion about body language, and he actually taught me a BJJ lesson.
Quite frankly, it's kind of unusual.
It's quite Franklin.
Got it. Quite Franklin.
I wanted to ask you some questions about body language. You read a lot about body language, and you kind of mentioned things in your book about like mating rituals and these certain books that come out, like the game and the strategies for picking up women and stuff like that. Not that that's the route that I want to go down on this particular podcast, but I wanted to ask you, like, being a body language expert, do you have the ability to kind of turn that off when you watch the news, watch an interview, whatever? Because I watched the piece with you on Dr. Phil where you guys were analyzing, you and your colleagues were analyzing the gentleman that you all got to interrogate, so to speak. And so it's like, can you actually watch a show when there's an interview or something like that and just turn that off and not assess somebody's body language?
Well, so an element of it, yes, and an element of it, no. So look, all of us, you, Rich, everybody, listening, watching this, we have an instinct for reading body language that we can never switch off. Because if we did, the same instinct that deals with how fast is that vehicle coming in our peripheral vision would switch off as well. And we'd already have been wiped out of the gene pool. So we have an instinct for reading body language. Some of our instincts are more effective than some other people's instincts. But in general, they're all, if you're alive, we're all pretty much equal. Because the idea is for your instinct to not be a brilliant body language reader. It just needs to be good enough to keep you alive. So if you're alive right now, it's doing its job, okay? And
obviously, I haven't turned it off. I've not been able to turn it off. I'm still alive. Gotcha.
You haven't turned it off at all, no. So now there's another part of our brain that I use to read people's behaviors, which is called the neocortex, the new brain, and I use critical thinking. And that part of the brain to read people's body language. Now that I can switch on and off, and in the main, it's off all the time.
Yeah.
I need to purposely go, oh, right, I've got a job to do here. I'm going to read Rich's body language here. And so now I'm going to use my critical thinking skills. Now, if I'm on the Dr. Phil show, for example, I'm using my critical thinking skills in order to do that, which means my brain is turning over all the time. It's trying to run a whole bunch of really complex kind of computations and algorithms to work out how can I get closer to the truth of what's happening here. Does that make sense to you, Rick?
It makes complete sense, actually, because to use an analogy on my side, like if I sit down and watch some fights, right? Yeah. I can't just sit down and watch fights from almost an entertainment perspective. Actually, now I've gotten to the point where I don't even enjoy watching MMA shows or boxing or anything like that, because as I sit there, I'm on the athlete side of things, analyzing things. Like I'm the guy in the chair that's, come on, move your head, keep your hands up, doing that thing. But then I'm also, because I've been on the executive side of things, I'm sitting there and I'm like, wow, this is really good lighting. I like what they've done here. That graphic was amazing. And so the whole show, once I'm in that realm, I can't seem to turn it off. for that particular thing.
Right. So what I would say has happened there is you have learned some patterns here, patterns in a fight, patterns in the structure of a fight and the structure of the entertainment and the business around it, that if you start to see a pattern that you don't think fits, you'll go, you should have done that better. Oh, you should be doing this move. Oh, you should structure the fight, the entertainment or the business in this kind of way. Yeah, I'm kind of the same in that I would have some structures that I've learned that others, don't need or are quite complex to run an appreciation or a criticism of those structures. But for me, it's a lot more kind of natural in inverted commas and easy to do that.
It reminds me of, there was a study done. I'm sure you know this, and maybe you know the name of the study. They took chessboards and they put pieces on chessboards, and then they had avid chess players, like chess masters, look at these boards, and then they had just average people look at them, and they would give them a certain amount of time to memorize where the pieces were. And obviously these chess players were capable of just reproducing these boards just at a quick glance. But then they took these same chessboards and they just, rather than put the pieces in a system where it was mid-game, they just randomly put the pieces on the chessboard, and the master chess players performed at the same level as the people who basically had never played chess before.
Totally. So I was looking into this chess idea, and one of the most disruptive things that can happen in a chess game is when one of the masters starts making mistakes and the other master doesn't know what to do, because they're now out of the pattern. And I don't know whether you've experienced that in your sport. Early
on, before I fought in the UFC, I used to do these contests, these little boxing contests by my house here. These were like things where I was like, I mean, this is the epitome of like some redneck town, Midwest kind of boxing event where everybody in the crowd is smoking. A couple guys might actually get out of the crowd and compete themselves. But when a good boxer or a good fighter gets into the ring with somebody who is not that skilled, they can give you problems because they're not doing things like they should. For example, they won't conserve energy, so they'll swing big, and they're doing, and for these first couple minutes or whatever, like it can give you fits, right? Because the intelligent fighter knows, like, hey, I need to conserve energy. I got to pace myself. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to keep my guard up, and they throw caution to the wind. And now they're doing these things that are just completely, and it throws you off to the point where it can cost you a match if you're not careful.
Right. Well, what this is about for me is understanding that the brain is not a knowledge machine. It's a best guess machine. Though we think it has knowledge, because obviously it's running these best guess algorithms, and quite often it gets the guess totally right, spot on. And you kind of walk around the planet going, well, I have some knowledge here. I thought this was going to happen, and it happened. Aren't I knowledgeable? No, you just guessed accurately. And then have you noticed sometimes when you're guessing inaccurately, you start going, well, I just don't know the world anymore. It's so confusing to me. And I think as you get good at anything, you have to understand, I maybe haven't built knowledge here. I've just built more accurate guesses around this. And so then something comes into that world that can throw you off completely, which is somebody who is performing in such a way that you don't have the guesses for. And now you're confused by them. Now you're just going, I don't know what's going on here. Give me some feedback on that, Rich.
So, well, let me ask you, because you mentioned in your TED Talk about, there was a little piece that you talked about the belly opening. I want to talk about body language with this and relate this to body language. So we're obviously, we're programmed through our instincts to be able to read certain body languages to a level, everybody, for survival skills. Yeah. So we'll talk about like this opening of the belly. This is kind of a standard posture of submissiveness or non-aggressive behavior, right? And so like you said in the talk, we're all programmed by our instincts in essence to be able to read something like that. So what, like these basic skills, like what are some basic body languages that obviously you have a knowledge of this at a level that the average person does not? Like you can perceive certain body languages. Listening to you guys break that guy down on Dr. Phil was amazing. Like just the little things, the lean back, all this kind of stuff. And I know that, you have to establish like a baseline with these people as well before you can just start making an assessment. But what are these like basic skills, I should say, or ability or body languages that people are just kind of built in, and maybe they just don't even consciously know that, oh yeah, I can read these things. And I know obviously this is one of those things. If I cross my arms, I'm in a bit of a defensive posture. So what are some of these obvious things that people have the ability to do?
Yeah. So for me, what it's about is being able to understand what are the many possibilities of what a signal might mean, being able to collect up the signals and therefore get closer to being very, very accurate about what somebody might be thinking or feeling. So, for example, and why that signal might come about as well. What is it about the human being and the human body that would create that signal? So, an example of that would be, you were talking, Rich, about this openness in the navel area and the front area. Well, look, we are upright hominids. We stand upright. But if Darwin is accurate, we are descended from ground-dwelling mammals. Okay, we are ground-dwelling mammals that stood upright. Obviously not immediately, but over millions and millions of years. But we never grew ribs all the way down. Okay, which would actually be way better in terms of our protection. Yeah. What we did is we got this soft belly area, which means we can duck and run and maneuver ourselves around obstacles and around predators and towards prey. But that leaves us vulnerable in this belly area. So if I'm open in that belly area, but not concave, but open in that belly area, it's because my instinct is saying, there's no predators around here. This is totally safe. So again, if I perform that behavior of, say, open palm gestures, no tools, no weapons, and open behaviors at navel height, it triggers you, it signals to you that there are no tools and no predators, and it's safe around me. I will look more confident, essentially. Now, if we just move, Rich, to what you were talking about there in terms of this crossed arm gesture. Now, crossed arms can mean all kinds of things. Sometimes people do it when they're cold. Sometimes people do it in order to stop their motor cortex working, so they can use that part of the brain to do decision making. Okay, if you stop your hands moving, you get a whole bunch of free brain for a bit. Okay, and so now you can do more complex computation and make better decisions. So sometimes when people want to make a decision, they fold their arms. And exactly like you say, Rich, sometimes they're using it as a barrier. They're using it as a way of not letting ideas or things in. But the important thing is like, which one? Which one of those is it? So we have to look at the context always. And that's often what I'm doing above and beyond what most other people are doing. I'm going, this isn't just a human being. This is a human being in context, in a situation, in a moment in time. They come from a certain background. I'm taking in a fuller context in order to get closer to a decision about them.
Thinking about the stuff that you said, like folding your arms, like I'll do this to fold my arms when I'm thinking. I also, for example, like if I'm leaning in the car, if I'm in the car and I have to think about something, like maybe I'm lost and I say, oh man, I got to figure out where I am. It's that turn the radio down, fold the arms, like, because I don't know why, but for whatever reason, a softer radio will also help you think better. And then you fold these arms in, and that probably does save, like you said, or not probably, but it does save on the motor cortex of the brain, because you're moving, and this obviously takes this unconscious thought, like something you're not even aware of, but it does use brain energy to have to make that happen. When you talk about the belly and you know, this particular thing, since we're on this subject, like this is something obviously, like maybe I'm defensive, maybe I've already shuffled you into the enemy category. We'll talk about that in a second, like, because when you broke that down in your book, that was actually really cool. I don't think I'm pretty sure I have not put you in the sexual category. Almost 100% positive on that one. Jury might still be out though. But if I've already put you in the enemy category, but I'm going to portray myself as being not threatened or non-threatening, this is a whole nother level of being able to read body language. And I think this is the difference between, well, not really the difference between, but the survival instinct versus somebody being able to assess at a much higher level.
So when you were, telling me about that and imagining that situation, and you were saying, hey, Mark, imagine I've put you in that threat, in that enemy category. What you did was as you were explaining that to me, you kind of put your hands on your hips or around your kind of torso.
My champion pose.
Area.
Yeah, I know this.
And your chest naturally came out, and you started to do the signal that I call I'm bigger than you think I was. Okay. Because look how that widens your body.
Oh yeah.
By, and we look at each other, whether male or female, if we're looking for threat, we're looking for upper body strength. And look, I'm talking to the right person here, because my guess is something around how to subdue a threat. Essentially,
just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Okay, good. I've got the right guy.
Yeah.
Why is the belly area so important? My understanding is if you can control my center of gravity, you've got a lot of control over me. It doesn't matter whether you control it from the front or from the small of the back or from the sides. If you can get some kind of control of my center of gravity, I think I've probably got some problems, and I can thrash around with my limbs and I can use my fists and all kinds of stuff. But ultimately, if you control my center of gravity, you're deciding exactly where my limbs go. If you want to take them to another room, I can hit you with but where in what location that's happening is being decided by where my center of gravity is, essentially, which is why that center of gravity is so important. And then when we go to the upper body, if I want to know, well, how likely is that person going to be able to control my center of gravity? I'm looking for how much upper body strength do they have? What's their shoulders like? What are their pectoral muscles like? Because that's where the power is most likely, my instinct tells me, is most likely where that's going to come from. So the bigger you look up there, the more of a threat you are to deciding where I'm going to be on the planet. But look, give me some feedback on that, Rich, because this is a theory that I've been going under for years and years and years. And I'd like to know from you, how accurate am I?
Actually, very accurate on that. And as I sat and listened to you talk, I thought, wow, you know more about jujitsu than a lot of people that have blue belts in jujitsu. See, here's what happens in and you know how it works. It doesn't matter what you're studying. So you take an art like piano, or you take an art like a martial art, for example, and you come in and you start learning drills, and you learn these drills. And initially, when you learn things, you don't know how they interconnect, right? Typically, a kid that's learning the piano learns how to hit a key and another key and another key, and then eventually you learn how these keys connect, and that's a certain level. I listened to Benjamin Zander TED Talk, and he gave an amazing thing on how we're not tone deaf. I don't know if you've ever heard his TED Talk.
It's great talk. Yeah.
Great talk. What really great talk. Not nearly as good as yours, I might say, but definitely a close second. But he talked about how we're not tone deaf, and in his talk he went through how the stages of how a kid learns the piano and how things start to join, and they join at a different level, and then you can start to connect the keys together, but then you start to connect the keys together with like different pitch elements and all that kind of stuff. And so it really takes somebody some time. And when you first start an art, you start with these mundane, like routines, rituals, drills, whatever, of I need to learn this move. Now I need to learn this move. Now I need to learn this move. Instead of thinking like, if I can control someone's center of gravity, if I can control someone's spine, where the head goes, the body will follow. These kinds of mentalities. Then instead of seeing individual moves that you're trying to link, what you see is a big picture that now starts to make sense. And much is the same, for example, with you, with body language, or with the way that the brain works and all that kind of stuff. And obviously we don't know everything about the brain, which is why I find discussions like this very intriguing. But when you can see that bigger picture and start making these links at a faster level, even when you're learning the basics of something, it comes together much more beautifully in a much more efficient fashion.
And I totally agree with that. I'm so interested in the fundamentals of something. So interested in why fundamentally does that technique work? Why fundamentally is it so effective? And because I'm in the, like in this world of human body and human movement, and therefore, the body, the physical body and the brain, I'm always so intrigued around how does the physiology of this really, really work? Like the thing. So when I look at body language, I'll be going, so what is it that's fundamentally the same about all human beings? And I start to look at things like, well, we're all fighting gravity. Okay, I don't care who you are, where you were born, who you come from, born at the top of a mountain or down by a lake, whatever part of the planet, you're trying to deal with gravity just like me. And so that idea of height and that idea of pushing against gravity is an idea that all our bodies understand. So for example, if you get excited, I'm going to expect that you're just going to rock up on your heels a little bit. And I'm going to see that little bounce against gravity as your brain gets excited and goes, wow, I'm feeling really positive about this. I'm going to show this by actually showing gravity that I can fundamentally beat it right now. And I'm going to guess that when you're down, when you're feeling a little bit under the weather, when you're feeling a bit subdued, when you're feeling like something's getting the better of you, I might see gravity get the better of you as well. And so I'm wanting to detect with you right from moment one, that baseline of how are you dealing with gravity right now? And then if I speak to you in certain ways, do I start to see you respond to gravity as I talk to you? So anyway, I hope that makes sense to you, Rich, and has some kind of, relevance to your world, the audience's world.
So as I was thinking about how this idea relates to jiu-jitsu, and I use that as an analogy for this in the way that the brain works, I now see that your ability to break things down, for example, like I might be a white belt or maybe a blue belt body language expert, whereas you're a black belt body language expert. So for example, much like a chess match, I can maybe there's certain body languages that I can give off, and you can start to read my body language, but you're going to start picking up on my baselines of different things. And then you'll be able to tell whether I'm being, like, as you talked about in your TED Talk, authentic or inauthentic. Sure. For example, and much like somebody who is on the mat doing jiu-jitsu or boxing or whatever, maybe I'm throwing a jab out there as a feeler just to set you up for this other thing. And it's my ability or my opponent's ability to be able to read like, I see what's going on here. I see what he's doing with this game. He's not trying to hit me with that jab. He's trying to set this other thing up here. And this is what I always tell people, like jiu-jitsu, at a certain level, I can't just say, I'm going to do this to you, Mark. I'm going to put you in this certain submission hold and be able to do that. I might be able to because you've never done jiu-jitsu before. I might say, Mark, I'm going to put you in a rear naked choke. That's an actual real move. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. And if you've never done jiu-jitsu before, I'll be able to do that. But the better you get at the game, the more you're going to be able to stop me.
Right.
And because you will understand, like, this thing that I'm doing here is not really what I'm trying to do. I'm just setting up for that rear naked choke that I wanted to do. And what I'm going to have to do is go to other tricks in my bag. And that's the ability of being able to read body language, essentially, is that very thing right there. And when it comes to human interaction inside the cage, I have better survival skills. When it comes to human interaction on the street, your survival skills far exceed mine.
Right. Well, here's what this is hinting to for me is that there's complexity. You can learn all the patterns you like. So my guess is I could train, within jiu-jitsu, and I could learn a whole bunch of patterns. And then I would hope that my opponent will have some of the similar patterns. And if they deliver pattern X, I deliver pattern Y. And then it very much is like a chess game. Okay. And ultimately somebody could probably at the start of a fight go, well, I reckon that person is most likely to win because they have more upper body strength. And if everybody plays out their patterns, that person will subdue, the other. But then complexity comes into play, which is why essentially you might have a sport that people would want to bet on because now there's the element of, well, we just don't know. Like, they are equally good. They are of equal weight. They are of equal ability. What on earth is going to happen here? And therefore, here's what it comes down to, whether it's a martial art or the ability to predict other people based on their body language, is I start to go, yeah, but what matters most? What of all the techniques here? What of all the understanding of human behavior? What matters most? And for me, in terms of body language, if I were to say to you, here's what matters most, I would go, watch the center of gravity, because that is what defines where that is and where that's pointed and how that's responding has most control over the rest of the body. Wherever that center of gravity is going, their brain is going as well. Whatever that center of gravity is doing, that navel area, that base of the spine, wherever that is going, like that's where their hands are going. Eventually, they're getting there. So I'm constantly saying to people who want to do what I do is go, you could look at a lot of stuff. You could look at a lot of different signals and you could read every book on this. But if I were to say, here's what will give you the most advantage in reading people's body language, I would be going, look at that navel area, look around there, see what's happening there. Is it concave or convex? In what direction is it going? Does it look like it's beating gravity or being subdued by gravity? Does it look like it's lowering to the center, to the gravity as well? Does it look like it's pushing down on that to get closer to the earth? Does it look like it's actually buoyant and up and literally floating, so it's getting higher to the sky at the moment? And let's make some fundamental decisions based on that center of gravity before we start looking at anywhere else. And I'd be interested, Rich, if you could give me one lesson in your world right now, from your world, to go, look, Mark, you can do all the training you like, you can read all the books you like, but here's the thing that really makes the difference. What would it be for your world?
As you were talking, this is what came to mind to me. You talk a lot about center of gravity, and I never actually thought about this as it relates to body language. This is very interesting because it applies to a lot of things athletically, everything that you do athletically, whether you're a football player, soccer player, whatever. I mean, any kind of sport, gymnast, it doesn't matter. And so what I think of when you start talking about this and the postures and the movements and all this kind of stuff, because there's actually like this triangle that I watch on the human body that is basically like, the collarbones down to the apex of an inverted triangle to where your pelvic region is. And that will help me read shoulders and hips. And essentially that's the main portion of the spine. If I watch that, even if you do a head fake or something like that, you can't throw me off because I can do this with my head, but until I start moving a shoulder, I'm not going anywhere. It would be interesting. Actually, I challenge you to get into a boxing class and maybe do an exhibition boxing match. And here's the reason why, because you're quite perceptive about this stuff. I wonder, and maybe there's actually no connection to athletic ability at all. I don't know, but I wonder how difficult or easy it would be for you to read these body languages in fractions of or microseconds, because now you have to be able to perceive this change in center of gravity ever so quickly in order to make a reaction as to, are they attacking? Are they retreating? Are they feinting? Are they, and so it would be interesting to apply these theories and to see how well the body language master could transition over to what I do for a living.
Well, let me tell you about that. My brother has a background in boxing, and you'll have seen boxers in your time. I'm sure you'll have done some yourself. I would assume as well. So I would watch him. I'd go see him train, and I would watch him. And as a voyeur, I'm pretty good at going, okay, look, I can see that center of gravity moving. I can see when somebody's, doing a feint with their head, because exactly as you said, the shoulders aren't moving. They haven't engaged their spine. They haven't engaged their core as well. But projecting myself into his position, I would just go, what are you doing, man? You keep getting closer to the guy who's trying to hit you. Move back. Don't move in. Get away. So there's a part of me that, which is the instinctual part of me that goes, well, the best place you could be right now is not in that ring. Where you want to be is not there, because that's just dangerous. There's a guy who keeps trying to hit you there, And so here's the thing. My guess would be, the moment I get in there, number one, I'm not trained. So I would go to instinct, and the instinct would be to get out of there. Okay, and to not move into blows, but to move away from them. Okay, so number one, I think the first thing that would go would be any neocortex ability to read body language. And I would go back to instinct, and my instinct would tell me, crunch up your center of gravity to harden, so the muscles are hard there, so that any blows to there will not puncture the delicate organs that are there. Lower your center of gravity really, really low. Okay, if you're gonna do anything, okay, hide your face, but try and control the other person's center of gravity, so you can at least use your upper body strength to move them to the ground and subdue them on the ground, and then run. And then get away as quickly as you can. Or if there's enough distance between you and them, just start running immediately. Oh, and by the way, if all else fails, faint, play dead. Just look like something that's ill and shouldn't be eaten.
That's what you're supposed to do with an alligator. You reminded me of my first karate instructor when I first started training. We would come into practices and we would run around the deck, and this was an old traditional Shorin-ryu Okinawan karate school, and so the wooden decks, and I mean it looked apart, and so we would just run circles around this deck. Finally, I asked him one. I was like, "Sensei, why do we run so much?" And he says, "Because karate is the art of self-defense, and if I can teach you to be fast enough, you'll never have to throw a punch."
Right.
So there, I'm as I listen to you talk, I'm thinking maybe you might make a better corner man than you would an actual fight. Like you can work in the corner. It's like, listen, here's what his body language is telling me, right? He's dropping his center of gravity here. He went wide for a second, so I know that he's about to, and you could just give an entire body language breakdown in the corners. And I jokingly say this because as an athlete, I'm one of those athletes who, I have a math degree, so I'm very cerebral in my thought process. I'm very analytically driven. I definitely collect data, like, microsecond data, and you're constantly analyzing. Every athlete is, but it's something that I do very well, that I maintain a very cerebral status, even when things don't go right, because when you start talking about your posture being defensive and all that kind of stuff, it's like the Mike Tyson quote says, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Yeah. So my next question, and I like asking this of all my guests, is, have you ever been punched in the face? And if so, when was the last time that happened?
No, I haven't. And the reason is, I would say I've been in plenty of situations where that could more than happen to me.
Where you deserve to be punched in the face.
Way more than happen to me. Okay. I am able to see a bigger picture around what's happening and work out how I might be able to negotiate the space and negotiate the desires that are happening there, in order that if that might well happen, I'm not going to be there. I'm just not going to be in that space. I'm not going to be available for that. Or I can talk somebody or maneuver them out of that kind of situation. I guess a good example was, so I used to work with offenders and at risk of offense, many of which who would have weapons with them, and many of which would often, either because of their anger and their situation or drug use, could be very dangerous and violent at times. And so I'd constantly have to be, you've got a room full of people like that, you're constantly having to work out, how's this going to go? Where's this going to go here? How can I make sure I'm in the right place around there? And one of the early pieces of training I was given around managing situations with these people who can be lovely, lovely people and just extraordinarily dangerous at the same time, but they balance that fine edge of being superb human beings and very difficult to be with, and a menace to society at the same time. One of the early pieces of training around that was, look, Mark, you show them an exit, build them a bridge, show them an exit, take them to the door, get them out, move them away from the group, move them away from you, help them move away from other human beings if it's going to go down like that. And there was one situation where, and this wasn't within that situation, but I was in my flat in London, and I was there alone, and I woke up with a biggest flash of adrenaline that I've ever had, because there was somebody at the bottom of my bed.
Oh,
I've never felt woken up with such a hit of adrenaline. Like everything became super clear. My voice
yep, I know this feeling.
changed. Like my whole body changed. But at that point I went, don't fight, show them the door. Show them the door. And I was bolt upright, and I just tried to calm myself down and said, it's okay. It's okay. I'm going to show you how to get out right now. And I stood up. Yeah. I moved calmly past them, opened up the door, and went, this is your opportunity to leave right now. And off they went.
You know what? I never actually tried that strategy when I was competing, but I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have worked for me inside the cage. You know, that feeling of adrenaline that you're talking about, I'm definitely an adrenaline junkie to some level, you know, and the best example I can give is like, if you've ever been driving down the street, for example, like I've been driving down the highway before, and suddenly a deer jets out into the street, and you have this moment of, I'm about to hit this deer. And when you're in these high adrenaline situations, you actually have it feels like you have the ability to slow down time.
It does.
Truly. Like you can perceive 17 or different things simultaneously going on. Should I go? I'm going to look over the shoulder, look in that mirror. Should I weave this way? No, there's a car in that lane. And you can do all these things simultaneously. And it's as if time slowed down, and that took 30 seconds, but it was just the blink of an eye.
Yeah, it is astonishing how that happens, and it can't be true that you actually slow down time. I mean, that you know, let's just take that as a given. That can't be what's happening.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Time's not a constant. Listen, I mean, we know time's not a constant because it can vary. So, I mean, there are time dilation theories and stuff like that. So, I'm just playing kind of devil's advocate for the.
No, listen, I'm happy to go down that route with you, but it'd have to be moving so much faster than you were.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
I'm pretty fast.
Yeah, you're a mathematician. You could probably do the math on that one.
Exactly.
You could know. I think what's happening is you know, part of what the adrenaline might be triggering is the ability to take in for a short amount of time all that unconscious data and deal with it cognitively. Now, you know, your brain can't do that 24/7 because you'd never move. There would be so much data that you were having to deal with and make decisions about that you'd be in stasis all the time. But for that, you know, X moment, the brain is has the capacity to go, we're giving all our capacity to this moment here, and we are going to consciously deal with the data that's coming in this life or death situation. But I agree with you that you know, for you and all those adrenaline junkies out there, I'm not really that person, but I remember experiencing that. I was with my son at one of the theme parks. I can't remember which one it was, but they had this Hulk ride, and it looked just very dangerous to me. And I don't like those rides particularly anyway, but
so you've never, for example, jumped out of an airplane?
No, God, no. I'm just like, no, why would you do that? Why on earth would you do that?
Tell you what, it's pretty cool, but I'll be honest with you. We'll get back to the Hulk ride in a second, but I'll just say this, you know, I'm skydive certified, and jumping out of a plane, the worst part is the anticipation of it. I'm not joking. Once you actually jump out of the plane, you realize that when you're in the middle of this thing, you're actually, as you're falling, like you'll jump out and you're like, oh, that's it? That's it? Like I'm floating here, and you can't even tell that you're moving towards Earth because you're so far in the air. But that really, I mean, the first time I jumped, I was in that plane, and being an adrenaline junkie, I'm like, oh my God, why do I put myself in these situations? So tell me about your Hulk ride experience.
Let me tell you about that, because it fits in with what you're saying. So my son wanted to go on this Hulk ride. And I'm going, well, I don't know whether I feel like it. And in the end, I was like, I can't let him go. You know, he wants somebody to experience this with. So it was really my my desire.
Fatherly duty.
Yeah. It was just like, I got to help him out here. It's my son. I got to help him out. I got to go on this ride with him. So I get on it, and it's a pretty good, the launch off and the acceleration is pretty severe, and it gives me a huge jolt of adrenaline, and it goes upside down many, many times and arrives again. And the moment it's finished, I went, great, let's do it again. So, because,
nice.
Because it had flooded my brain with so much adrenaline and endorphins. I was like, I'm invincible. I'm totally invincible. Yeah. Let's do this again. And I think we did it like about 4 times in succession, and because it was a very empty park at that point. About 4 times in succession, until the point where the people who were running the ride went, no, you can't do it more than like, we won't let you on anymore. We because there's a certain amount that we kind of go, you've had enough, sir. Step away from the bar.
That's exactly what fighting is like, because, leading into a match, sitting in the locker room, all that kind of stuff, and not just the actual time before the locker room, but I mean, weeks out, man. Yeah. It's a lot of nerves and anxiety and stuff like that. You're facing fears, and you're asking yourself, like, why am I doing this? And then the moment that the fight's over and you get your hand raised, you're just like, let's do this again. And knowing that the moment you do that again, you're going to put yourself through that same stress, all those same reactions in the brain and everything that's going on, and why, and then you do it again. And so I've lived a lifetime of that experience.
Let me give you some feedback on that, because I was, before we had this interview, I was just, looking you up on Wikipedia and looking at the fights that you'd had. And, you've had a career, and a phenomenal career in fighting. But then when you look at the number of events, like, let's just call them the days going to work, you'd kind of go, every year you're working towards these pinnacle moments, but it's such a short moment of like, well, that's the pinnacle of the project, I guess. And it just seemed extraordinary to me that all the work that goes into this pinnacle moment. And so I can totally realize why the brain would just go, let me do another one immediately. Come on, let's do another one.
Absolutely.
Bring me another guy.
You have to have a special kind of motivation for stuff like this. And I'm not just talking about fighting. I was, I ran a travel show for a while when working in Asia. And on one of the episodes, we climbed Mount Fuji. Now, Mount Fuji is not a very tall mountain, and it's really not that difficult of a mountain, but we were there a few weeks before the mountain actually opened for climbing. None of the trails were open. It was still snow covered. And instead of zigzagging our way up, we took a direct route up the mountain. And at that time in my training, I was doing some stuff with weights where I was lifting heavy, and I wasn't conditioned for volume type of work. So this was an especially more difficult climb on me, even though I've climbed higher mountains. My crew, it wreaked havoc on my crew that was with me that day. And it ended up being that one of the athletes I was recruiting for this show, he and I were the only 2 that made it to the top. And you're walking up this thing, and it took us 5-6 hours to get to the top, maybe. And as you walk, your steps become smaller and smaller and smaller. And your breath, because we took a direct route, we didn't have enough time to acclimate to the change in oxygen. And it's really one of those walks. It's like, this is not a fun walk. Like, I'm not, but you get to the top, and you look out, and you're like, this is a gorgeous view. I'm going to stand there for about 15 minutes. And then I got to make my way back down to the mountain before the sun starts setting and the weather gets really bad at that altitude. Yeah. And so you literally put these hours of arduous work into getting to the top, this moment of accomplishment, appreciation of the view, and then you go back down. And that little bit has to matter to you in such a way, not the actual extrinsic payoff, because you can't be motivated by things extrinsically like money or something like that. But that moment has to be a good enough payoff that all that stuff working up to it has to be worth it.
To be expert in, or a top performer in certain fields, and certainly it's the same for my field, is the amount of work that goes into being able to decide what's most important and do the thing at the pinnacle. The amount of work that's needed to be done there, just most people can't contend with that amount of preparation, essentially, or how mundane that preparation might be, or how painful and mundane that preparation can be. And so they may want the pinnacle place. They may want, well, I want to be you, and I want to get that prize, and I want to be at the top. And people do come to me quite often and go, I want to be an expert like you, and can I work with you and learn from you? And I will usually set them to see whether they are at all serious about this. A very mundane, tedious, and slightly arduous task. Go and do this, and then come back to me. I've never had anybody complete that yet. Never.
Exactly. When I was in college, I took piano for non-music majors because I decided that I wanted to learn how to play the piano. And I got through the first quarter of that class, and then I was in the second quarter of that class, and I was actually making some great progress, and I was quite happy. But what happened is I realized that my piano playing was starting to bite into my martial arts training. And I quickly realized I didn't want to learn how to play the piano. I just wanted to know how to play the piano, right? And so these arduous tasks that you do, I do the same thing. When somebody says to me like, man, Rich, I want to lose weight. I'm like, okay, well, here's what I want you to do. And I give them this task. I'm like, write down everything you eat for a day. And I go and I give them the details of everything that I want. And like, okay, if you're willing to actually do this, it's not that arduous, but it's arduous enough that, and then I just tweak little things at a time, because that's when you find out if people are really serious about something or not.
Absolutely. So, I think anybody listening, if you are ever trying to reach some kind of level of peak performance or peak in whatever you're trying to do, and you do go to somebody who you feel is a master at that, and you feel you want to be like or emulate or learn from, and they set you some kind of task that seems to you pretty stupid, mundane, and like, what, that won't fix anything. Try and do it. Because it's the stuff that we did, and we did every day to get to and that was our commitment. It's like, I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to be so obsessed by, I remember as a kid, one of the most brilliant books I ever read was Arnold Schwarzenegger's, and I don't think it was a biography. Somebody had, interviewed him and got some quotes out of him. But the thing that hit me about that, because there you'd got, arguably a peak performer. He'd been, Mr. Universe X amount of times. I'm sure that's not easy to do that a number of times. And his thing, whether it's accurate or inaccurate, that basically he was saying, look, I'm just there more than anybody else. I'm just so obsessed with it. I'm there more than anybody else. And again, whether this is just a story or not, this idea of like, I break into the gym so that I can work out longer and more than anybody else, that really hit me. Not that I was at all trying to be an athlete in any way, but I thought, that's it, to be so obsessed that you will just do it, the mundane stuff, more than anybody else. There has to be a secret in that. And so if I've done anything, I've just done more of the mundane stuff more than anybody else, to an extent that then I kind of worked out, well, out of all this stuff, what will give the most impact? What's most important? And that's the real art of it, is working out for yourself what makes the biggest difference to be best at this. Anyway, I don't know whether that makes sense or is useful in any way.
No, it makes absolute sense. So then I'm going to take that and I'm going to shift gears a little bit, because you talk a lot about, for example, like a lot of the work that you do applies to corporate people, people that are looking at sales and stuff like that. Well, have you ever had anybody come to you for dating purposes?
Yeah. And it's not an area that I focus on particularly much, because I don't know at this point in my life whether I'm really embedded well in that situation. I don't know how much I understand of that world. But I guess, the advice that I give people in that is to try and help them focus on what they're actually trying to achieve. Like, what is the end goal of this? Because often they're looking at short-term goals. Like, how can I show up? How can I show up at this particular date and be attractive or know that they're attracted to me, instead of looking at the bigger, longer goal. Like, why would that be important? What are you trying to do here? I mean, I'm sure we can end up with all some very kind of short-term ideas, like, I want this date to, transfer into something bigger that evening. Or it's like, well, why? Like, how often would you like that to happen on a regular basis? So you're trying to move from person to person to person, or, because based on the goal, we can, if you're really clear about the goal, we can get you what you want. If you're clear on the goal. If you're not clear on the goal, I don't know whether I can get you what you want, because you don't know.
Okay, let's say that somebody's goal, I come to you, I'm like, Mark, I'm dating. I just have trouble like reading women. I don't know if somebody's interested or not. I'm looking for a life mate. Talk to me about body language. What are some of the top body language things I could look for? I'm sure that, you and Tracy, your wife, are sitting at restaurants. I'm sure that you guys love people watching.
Yeah, sure.
I'm fairly certain of this. So let's say that you see another couple, and you're looking and you're like, first date or married? And if it's a first date, is he interested? Is she interested? How can I tell? So I'm on a date with a woman.
Yeah.
What type of body languages should I be looking for to know that she's interested in me?
Yeah, a couple of things you're going to want to check out. So here's what many experts, in inverted commas, might go for, is they would probably go mirroring. Okay, mirroring. Is she copying you? Are you copying her? Is there mirroring? I would say you're going to mirror each other anyway. It's like, that's going to happen. Even if that is no indicator of that you're totally into each other right now, or longevity. That's like, you do that with friends. You do that with the boss. It's like everybody mirrors each other to get a sense of what we call theory of mind. How are they thinking? How are they feeling? How are they fitting in with each other? And in relationships that are sexual or partnerships, we have a stage of that called infatuation, where mirroring is extreme. Like, you like the same food as she likes. She likes the films that you like. And then a few months down the line, or years down the line, or you're married, and it's like, and then suddenly somebody goes, yeah, actually, I've never really liked that food. And suddenly you start admitting that unconsciously you were putting on an act in order to win a shorter term situation there of, now you've got into a strong agreement, a social agreement that is maybe even has legally binding documents around it now. Okay. And now becomes the real work of, can we make this a long-term partnership? Now, having understood that we just married an alien, we are both aliens.
So let's take a step back before that, because in your book, on the Primitive Brain book, and you have 4 categories that we put everybody in. This was and so you're either friend, your foe, sexual partner, or just indifferent. So obviously I should be able to tell right away whether somebody's going to put me in the foe category, by certain, So if I'm on a date with somebody, I don't know, I met them through an app or set up by a friend, blind date, I'm sitting there having a talk with a lady. What indicators can I tell whether I'm, sexual partner, friend, or indifferent?
Yep. So if it's looking more towards sexual partner, you will be valuable. Okay, you will look valuable to her. You will get some pupil dilation. You got to check out. Are you at a coffee date? Because if you coffee date, pupil dilation is going to happen anyway. That means the pupils are going to get bigger. Okay, because if you're more valuable, more light is needed in to get in more imagery of you. Okay, so if it's a coffee date, there's pupil dilation anyway. If the person has a cold, they might be taking a drug as well that gives pupil dilation as well. Anyway, so here's what will happen. As their pupils dilate, they will look more attractive to you, because you're attracted to people who are attracted to you. You're attracted to people who see you as valuable. So if you're starting to feel more attraction, you might speculate from that, that's because they're sending me signals of attraction. So you're going to want to look for a feeling as well. So this is not a feeling of, hey, I think they look good. Yeah, that's an external kind of aesthetic idea. You know, they're good looking. You're going to feel attracted to them. Yeah, it's like a feeling in your stomach that you go, this is nice. I'm quite liking this. That's because they're quite liking you. Now, the cognitive thing I want you to look out for is, are they closing space on you? Are they getting close to you? Are they moving their hands closer to your body? Are they leaning forward into you? Are they sitting closer to you? Now, here's what you got to check is there are some environments that will cause that to happen. You want to check their closeness in an environment where they could be a long distance from you. So it's no good checking out, are people attracted to me in an elevator? Because an elevator causes people to stand close together, okay? Go into an environment where they could get distance from you and see how close they stay from you. Move away from them. See if they follow and stay close to you. Yeah. Because again, there's a good, so anyway, listen, I hope that gives you there are many things we could go for, but again, all I want to give you is the ones that are probably going to be the easiest to do and give you the most assured result. And one of the best assured results you can get is take somebody who you think is attracted to you into an environment where they could have a long distance from you very easily and see if they're the same proximity to you that they were in the bar where they had to be close up to you anyway.
I'm just, I'm thinking about things that listeners might ask, like people that would comment on this. Argumenting, like arguing on things, winning arguments and stuff like that. How does body language play into winning arguments, losing arguments, having arguments?
Yeah. So look, here's the thing about argument as a structure, as a game. Okay, as a structure, the idea of an argument is to win the argument. Okay, so nobody ever went, oh, we were having an argument, it ended really well, we agreed. We came to I changed my mind, they changed their mind, we came to an agreement. Usually we say, no, it was good because they recognized what I was saying in the end. Or you went, I was a terrible argument because, in the end I ended up leaving and, because, I was just losing the argument completely. The idea of an argument is to win. So only have an argument if you know you can win, okay? Or you're okay with losing, or you can win and you're okay with them losing, okay? You got to know that you're okay with that. And so
I want to say those three options again, because these are important. I've never actually thought about this before. This is quite simple, but very profound simultaneously.
Yeah, so if I want to argue with you, here's what I want to know. I want to know, first of all, do I think I can win this argument? Because if I think I can win it and win it at really low cost to me, let's have an argument. The other thing I've got to take into consideration is, am I okay with you losing? Because there will be payback if you lose. Okay, you won't forget that you lost. You'll store in that loss, and I'll have to pay for it sometime later. So, am I willing to pay the price of you losing? If am I willing to pay the price of willing to pay the price of you losing? If so, good. Let's have an argument. It'll be over quickly. I'll have won. You'll have lost. I have to pay back at some point later, but I'm all good with that. There's also the opportunity that you will win. So it's like, okay, am I good with you winning? What would be the benefit of you winning this argument? Because inevitably you'll win it. So what's the benefit of that? So again, I might go, yeah, let's have that argument. I will inevitably lose. You'll win, but there's a benefit to that. The likelihood is with an argument, somebody at some point, because they're quite high, they escalate pretty quickly and they're quite high energy. Somebody will quickly transform into a winner and a loser because it's hard to sustain for a bit like a fight. In a fight, there's a winner and a loser on the whole. I know there are draws now and again, but a fight can only sustain over X amount of time before it just becomes a scrappy kind of blubbery mess where nobody can do anything anymore. Everybody's too tired, and ultimately it's like, well, that one won because they could sustain it longer than that one. That one just fainted in the end, gave out, So look, now if you decide you're going to fight, now you want to be able to dominate not only with your argument, but dominate physically around that. So here's what I might do. I might do suppressive gestures as I am giving you my argument. So anybody who's just listening to this, I'm doing downward facing palms as I push down. And I might even do that over the top of your shoulders to show you how I'm like gravity. I push you down. Yeah. If I want you to back off from your argument, I'm going to cause you to back off, and I'm going to place my palms towards your stomach area. Okay. And I'm going to push in that area. I may not touch your stomach. That might trigger all kinds of fight and flight with you. But even if I did think I could make some physical contact with you and I want to dominate, again, I might gently place my hand just towards your navel area and stomach and give you my argument there, because it'll cause you to subdue yourself during this. I would not do push gestures at your chest area while I'm having this argument. That will cause you to have bravado, because your chest is pretty safe. Yeah, I could prod and push at your chest all day, every day, and your chest would go, you're not having any effect on me.
Wouldn't there be issues with just violating that personal space, that 18 inches of personal space that we have normally? And I'll just say this for the listeners: like when we talk about argument, that word could be replaced with debate, for example. So that it's not, it's the same thing. Like it could be an intelligent debate conversation or whatever. But either way, like is there issues with violating someone's personal space? I mean, if you and I are arguing, even if I don't touch you, like I could, tap you on the shoulder or whatever as some sort of power play. What if I'm sure there's a difference between perhaps my hand violating your personal space versus my entire body violating your personal space, So how does that play into changing the dynamic?
Yeah. So obviously all of that into account. But if we were debating and we still have space from each other, we're in a debate situation where there's literally space created for that debate. I still might, I could do what we call psychological gesture, which is I gesture like I'm tapping on your shoulder as I give you the argument. Okay. I gesture like I'm suppressing your shoulders as I give you the argument. I gesture like I'm pushing at your stomach area as I give you that. Now, as I gesture towards your stomach area and push there, psychologically, you were more likely to back off on me. If I gave you a tap on the shoulder, a psychological gesture, I pretend like from a distance, I tapped you on the shoulder, I bet you'd rile up. I bet you'd go, oh, you're just tapping my shoulder? I think I can come back at you at that. So if I've got a strong, if I want you to argue with me and get aggressive with me, I could gesture like I'm tapping you on the shoulder. In fact, I could give you lots of little taps. And I bet you'd get really riled up with me, which might destabilize you. Okay. If I want you, because now you're riled up around your upper body. You're all over the top of your center of gravity.
Might not take several of these psychological taps to destabilize me. I might destabilize after just one of them.
You might do. Yeah. Because it's enough. It's like, don't tap my shoulder. Already the unconscious mind has seen the psychological gesture. You don't flick me like a fly. And suddenly you're up above your center of gravity. You're all off your gravity. Your hands are coming off. The audience are seeing you debate and they're going, well, he's getting a bit passionate, agitated about this. It's only a simple little, argument about something little. Look how agitated he's getting. Yeah. Or I might want you to step back from your argument immediately. Now, if I want you to do that, I would just push gently towards your stomach area. Yeah. to try and get you psychologically to concave there. And if you concave there, then gravity gets the better of you. So that's what I might do in argument. But on the whole, I try not to argue. I try to influence and persuade. And so when I influence and persuade, I'm trying to mirror you, not only your body language, and do very open versions of how you're being. So I'm trying to show you I'm really open and I'm very much on your side, but I'm trying to emulate your attitude and your viewpoint, because I want to influence you. And influence comes from the Latin inflow. It literally means get in the river with you. And so literally I would try and stand next to you and see it from your point of view. And I'd use words like, let me understand this. Let me see it from your point of view. Yeah. And I'd stand next to you. I'd emulate your body language. I'd copy your tone of voice. And I might even say, okay, well, look, walk me through this. And I'd start walking. So you're walking alongside me. And I'd get you to walk me through this thing. And then I'd do what we call persuasion, which I'd say, look, I'm totally with you on this, and I'm on your side. I'd literally be on your side, and I'd literally be with you on this. And I'd go, what I see is there's kind of three paths to go down right now. And I put forward three options. Now, in putting forward those three options, I would stack the deck on one of them. I would make one of them less resource and better outcome. Okay. I'd say, so we can call that kind of mummy bear and daddy bear and baby bear. And daddy bear is too expensive and too big and doesn't give you a lot back. And baby bear is too small, super cheap, but again, doesn't really do the job. Mummy bear is just the right price, just the right, more outcome for the price, super high value and super comfortable to go with. And I'd say, which one do you think, we should go down right now? And I guarantee I know the one that you'd choose. And I'd go, that's a brilliant idea. That's really good. That's influence and persuasion. And that's really what I do, rather than argument, though I do argument.
I need to get to the influence or persuasion before I actually get to the argument portion of things. I think too much of my life has been spent meeting force with force. You know what I mean? I would imagine that I can't imagine you in any kind of situation. For example, as you were explaining this, I thought, the other day I booked a hotel, and then the hotel was non-refundable. And after I booked it, I realized probably within the hour, I'm like, oh man, I need to unbook this, which I can't. So I lost the money. And I thought, as you were explaining this, I thought, I'll bet Mark had never gotten a situation with a customer service rep where he wasn't able to persuade them to go ahead and give the refund or to whatever,
Yeah. So I would do this. I would go, number one, I've got to recognize that ultimately I signed a contract which says there is no argument.
Yeah.
Must have signed something, pressed a button that says there is no way out of this. So then I would go to the person and go, look, here's the situation that I'm in right now. If you were in my position, what would you be doing right now? Because my guess is they have avenues. Yeah. So I'm going what would you do if you were me? So now that causes them to put all the power of their knowledge and insight and behind the scenes power into me. I said, look, imagine you're me. What would you do? Well, my guess is that they go, well, we got this, this whole system whereby we would be able to, circumnavigate this contract that was in, and then I might go, oh, wow, that's amazing. How can we do that now? So I've got them on side. How can we do that now? So I've made them part of a gang with me. And I've said, I want to do it. So I'm saying you have insight and power. Now I want you to show me that. Show me that insight and power. How can we do that now? So that's the way I'd go. Now, I don't know whether it would work.
You say, if you were me, what would you do? I'd be like, if I was you, I'd pay your credit card bill because you signed a contract you can't back out of. So good luck with that one, pal.
Yeah, but I go, and I would agree with you. I would get on side with you like I did there. I'd go, yeah. But imagine you didn't want to do that. What would you do? So now I go, imagine you didn't want to do that. What would you do? So I just engaged you in your imagination, because your critical mind goes, hang on, you signed a contract. There is no way around this. And I go, well, imagine there is. What would it be? So now you start to dissolve the barriers around that. Now, the body language I put with that is I copied your body language. You found that funny. So I laugh along with you. And I go, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I just get in the river with you and go, yeah, exactly right. Now imagine. So I go, now imagine you didn't want to do that. What would happen? What would you do? And I've got an upward inflection. I'm really buoyant. I'm beating gravity at the same time. And I'm going, look how much fun it is. Look how well we get on when you imagine something different with me. So that's what we call influence and persuasion rather than argument.
There's a good video where you guys were assessing a guest on Dr. Phil on the website Truth Plan. Is it truthplan.com? Is that what it true? Now, after having had this conversation, having watched some of this, it's amazing the complexity. Not that I didn't know there was complexity in this to begin with, but just little nuances and all the little things. Like truly you are a master of your craft when it comes to this kind of stuff. I couldn't imagine getting into an argument with you, so I'm going to try to avoid that moving forward. Your book, Truth, Lies, and What People Are Really Thinking. You co-wrote that with your wife.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I haven't read this one yet. So what I want you to do, because I read The Primitive Brain, great book. There was some good stuff on that. And man, I had so many things that I wanted to talk to you about. I know we've been on here a while, and time is money, and I understand that, and I appreciate your time. But sell me on this book, because well, I'll be honest with you, I'll probably end up picking it up anyway. But I still want you to sales pitch me on it.
Here's what happened: is the publishers. HarperCollins came to us and said, will you write a book on reading body language? And the first thing we said was no, because we kind of thought, well, there's a lot of books out there on reading body language, and some of them are good and some of them are bad. And then we went, we've probably made the wrong decision there. We should really write a book for HarperCollins. What we decided to do was to write a book on critical thinking disguised as a book on reading body language. So it does have all the stuff you want to have around, look, here's what signals can mean, and here's what to look out for in dating, in your family relationships, in your business relationships. It's got all the stuff that you want on that. But the most important thing it has is the critical thinking method, the kind of chess game that we use. And it's not as complex as chess by any stretch of the imagination. There's just 5 stages to it. The 5 stages of thinking that you use in order to use your understanding of body language to truly understand what somebody might be thinking and feeling. What it does, Rich, is to help you think more accurately about other people. So you will know people better, you'll understand them better, and therefore you will have a better time with more people in your life. I hope that's a decent pitch for you.
I'll tell you what, that was a pretty daggone good sales pitch. Enough that I might want to read this book and bring you back on to talk about that as
I will
well.
come back and talk to you anytime, because you're super interesting, and most of all, like, you have an understanding of the human body, and I love people who have a really good understanding of the human body.
Well, I appreciate that. Any other websites that you want to let the listeners know about?
Yeah, for sure. Look, if you're really interested in what I do, go to truthplane.com, TRUTHPLANE, truthplane.com. And if you're really into the body language piece oh, by the way, do look me up as well. Mark Bowden and anything to do with mixed martial arts and boxing as well, because I actually do a lot of breakdowns, body language breakdowns of the walk-ons.
Hold on, how come I didn't see this? Where is this stuff, Mark?
Check out on Bloody Elbow. There's a whole bunch. Sorry, that's
you're on Bloody. Oh, you're on Bloody Elbow.
Yeah. Check out on Bloody Elbow, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that I do that. Maybe I should do some of your stuff. we could have some fun, and there must be some video of you doing some face-offs. I break down those, and also I just did some classic ring walk-ons as well from boxing history.
This is what I think we need to do. I think what we should do is let's have you watch fighters walk out. Let's do something like this in the future. Have you watch fighters walk out and make predictions based on body language.
I would love to do that.
Of who's going to win the match.
I would love to do that. So listen.
and let's see how accurate you are. Then we can start a gambling website.
I would love to do that.
Listen, half the stuff that I wanted to actually talk to you about today, I didn't even get to. So there'll be questions that I'll ask you for a future conversation.
I'm happy to come back anytime.
Awesome.
Good to see you, Rich.
Yeah.
Fascinating discussion.
Awesome. Great conversation. Had a good time. Thank you so much, buddy.
Bye now.
Quite Franklin is providing this podcast as a public service, but it is neither a legal interpretation nor legal advice, nor a statement of Quite Franklin policy. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation of that product or entity by Rich Franklin or Quite Franklin. The views expressed by guests on the podcast are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Views and opinions expressed by Quite Franklin employees or representatives are the views and opinions of the persons expressing them, and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Quite Franklin or any of its officials or principals. Nothing heard on this podcast at any time is medical advice or is intended as medical advice. The listener must always consult his or her personal physician or other qualified medical professional regarding any questions of a medical nature. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact our general counsel.